Yep.
Let's talk about Farouk. He's going to be a big player on this pay-per-view. You're positioning him for a world title shot, and you sort of start to set the tone when he's in the ring being interviewed by Vince McMahon. And he's talking about how, there's never been a black man to wear the WWF world title. And there's only been token intercontinental champions like Ahmed Johnson. And he even makes the comment to Vince. He says something like, you don't feel a black man is worthy of being champion of the WWF, but you do think a black man is worthy of washing your car. And he called the Undertaker your white savior. And he says, we are no longer sitting back, and we're going to, get what we want by any means necessary. So this militant stance and maybe teetering on controversy when you're talking about, well, there's never been a black champion, just token champions. Is that Vince Russo pushing for that? Is that Vince McMahon pushing for that? It does feel like a slippery slope creatively.
It is slippery. It was a slippery slope. It was edgy. It was TV 14 material. And in today's world, it would not be probably accepted because of the racial overtones of the topic. At that time, in that era, 1997, a little bit different public climate. It was in the process of a fictional presentation. Of course, we all knew that Farouk was Ron Simmons, four-time All, and I even said that on that broadcast. He was a legit four-time football All-American at Florida State. He was a beast as a nose tackle. So you couldn't do that today, as we all know, but then it seemed to work, and everybody was on the same page. Ron had no issue saying it because, quite frankly, one of the things that makes heels great, Conrad, is when they tell you the truth and you don't want to hear it.
Right.
And that's what he did. So, and then of course Taker was, and Ron and all those cats in the nation were Taker guys, friends, buddies, whatever. So, and Vince wanted to be edgier. So I don't know if it was a Russo just flipped the switch and there it came. It was a combined effort, but certainly it would not be fair to Russo to say that his creativity didn't contribute to that type of presentation.
One of the other things I wanted to talk about on this show is Rob Van Dam, while he's still working for ECW, has a match on this same episode of Raw, and it's against Jeff Hardy. Now, this is before we know the Hardy Boys. Jeff's here working as an independent, as an underneath, as an enhancement worker, whatever you prefer. And Rob Van Dam is positioning himself as like a traitor from ECW who's now competing on Monday Night Raw. And Jerry Lawler is using this to advance his angle, which will ultimately pay off at Hardcore Heaven with a match on an ECW pay-per-view against Tommy Dreamer, where he's saying that this is extremely crappy wrestling and that ECW can't compete with the talents of Rob Van Dam. So he's done there, and now he's Mr. Monday Night. Tell us how this came to be, because at the time, this is pretty groundbreaking that you have another promotion featuring their talent on Monday Night Raw.
Well, it is the one of the things behind the scenes that some people know is that the WWF at the time was subsidizing ECW and helping them keep their doors open. And I know that to be a fact. It's not hearsay because it came out of my budget in the talent relations side. So, that was several reasons. I think Vince actually liked Paul. I certainly did. We knew he was a bright mind who was there if we ever needed something somewhere down the road. He was an asset that we wanted to at least, covet to some degree. But the other thing is that we also knew that ECW has some really good talents that, and so many of them were Northeastern guys that they grew up with a WWF background and DNA. So they would be a good fit for us because they would want to come to our company, we thought, and they did. So there's a lot of reasons to do that. And it helps keep the business alive and all kinds of the right reasons. So that was kind of the part of that deal. It wasn't like it was a screw job on Paul or anything, it was all planned out. And, but I thought Rob Van Dam, I still do. I think he's one of the best performers we ever had. He can do things that were so far ahead of their time. He's so innovative and creative and unique. And the thing a lot of people don't realize about Rob, and you kind of talk about how tough he is. And his movie he did not too long ago, a little documentary, was really good. He talked about his concussions. This son of a gun worked hard a lot, and he was tougher than a $2 steak without a doubt. So Rob Van Dam was always high on my list of talents, and I'm glad that we got him. It was Rob Van Dam had that ability, that inherent ability, which is a blessing in this business, to connect with his audience, because he was being himself, not unlike Steve Austin was being himself, or Shawn Michaels being himself, or Bret Hart. Rob Van Dam was an enhanced version of Rob Van Dam, and people could get that. They didn't think they were being worked. So he was a big time player. Jeff was so young. About that time, I'm guessing, Conrad, Jeff he might have been 17, maybe 18. He and Matt both maybe fibbed on their age when we used them. I brought them in a lot to do TVs. I liked them. Their dad was a mail carrier, single dad, and I loved their story and the fact they made their own wrestling gear, and they're big time marks, just like me. I always had time for the Hardys, still do. But you could tell Jeff was going to be something special, because he too connected with the audience, and he had that great face and the great body English and athleticism. So, looking before us right there, we had two guys in the ring. Again, going back to that Al Snow story earlier about wanting to get guys that could work with anybody and make guys better. For a guy like Jeff Hardy to get better, he needed to work with guys like Al Snow, for example. But he and RVD that was a nice night, and Rob got his win, and the people connected with Mr. Monday Night, and they stayed connected for a long time.
Let's talk about the Dustin Rhodes interview that aired here. This era of 97 is a little weird in that you guys are doing like sit down interviews with different talent. Later in the summer, you're going to do this with Mick Foley. Of course, he'll be in character as Mankind, but that's when we'll first learn about Dude Love and all that. But here we're doing it with Dustin Rhodes, and it's a pretty emotional interview. And he's talking about his relationship with his dad, where he's saying, all those years I looked up to you and you were bigger than life. I wanted to be just like you. And there's no one on the planet who can do Goldust as well as I can. And I hope you're proud of me and myself and my family. And I love you, Dad. But they weren't really talking at the time. They'd had a real life falling out. Whose idea was it to, hey, let's put that on TV?
I'm assuming it's Vince's idea. We started getting this more reality-based television storylines, and that was a good one for all the right reasons. Dusty's a world famous Hall of Fame guy, and everybody had great name identity. And the father-son thing was not a work; it's real. So we were kind of fading toward that era of presentation, which is still work today, quite frankly.